Hey Pammy, this video is for you. It talks about the type of cipher used in the algorithm when they committed the fraud. It's very simple really, but listen, because you have to be able to explain it to the jury.
Okay, and the county IDs were made first, and then the state ID numbers were generated, and then they used the algorithm to combine them into the same record. And this joining is where the algorithm came into play. They didn't change either one of these numbers. These numbers are exactly whatever the computer said they should be, okay? But the way they were connected was a very clever thing to do, actually, because they're not creating a new number, but they're creating a unique relationship that is completely invisible. There's no field that helps you find this, okay? And so it's based on numbers called rep units, meaning they're all ones. So if you're one of these guys who loves numerology, I'm not one, by the way, but you're going to see 11s everywhere. So it's 1s, 11s, 111, 1,111, etc.
This is exactly what you were saying.
They spaced the county IDs within
the
state IDs so that they were separated by these rep units. And what they did was they first assigned them based on the largest rep unit that would fit in the county. So if you had 1 million voters, then the largest rep unit that would fit would be 100,000 or 111,111. So you'd be able to fit 9 of those in there. So you'd have 9 of those, and they'd be spaced every 100,000 records. And then they go to the next highest rep unit, which is 11,111. They'd see how many of those would fit, and then they'd put those in. But every time you do it, you're reducing the number of available numbers.
You were right about the 111.
All of a sudden, you might get down to the lower units, and they won't fit in as many times as you think because you've already used up some of the numbers up above. So once they've done all that, then, just to be even more tricky, they go ahead and interlace those numbers, okay? But before they interlace the numbers, they also shift the numbers, just like a Caesar Sypher. So a Caesar Sypher has like the letters A through Z, and they move all the letters over by 3 letters, right? So now instead of ABC being the first 3 letters, it's XYZ, and then ABC, and then it ends with, I guess it's W, or, yeah, W. So that's what they did, is that then they shift the numbers. But they don't shift them the same number for each row. It's a different number for each row, and I had to figure out how to calculate that. That was like a really difficult thing that kept me busy for about 3 weeks all by itself. So anyway, so they're doing all of these modifications or transfer in math. I think it's called transformations of the numbers in order to obfuscate them yet further. And I found what I would say is a minimum of 6 layers of pretty strong obfuscation, and then there were a few other more minor layers of obfuscation for a total of around 11 or 12 layers of this. It's a lot.
12.
And one layer they did, which I thought was really devious on their part, and just absolutely tricky in a way that would make me shoot somebody who was a poker game in the Wild West 1850 or something, but they decimalized the county ID numbers.
Decimalizing the county ID.
Decimal point to the left of all the county ID numbers, and that turned it into a different number, okay? Because 1001 is not the same number as 0.1001, okay? And what happens as a result of that is now they sort in a totally different way. So they go ahead and they add the decimal point, then they sort them, then they use the algorithm to attach them to the state numbers, and then they remove the decimal point, thus destroying the evidence of what they did, and thus making it really hard to find, okay, and making the pattern more difficult to discern. So this is the short version of what happened in New York. It is
That's the short version, Pammy.
Every single one of the steps I just described, and then the other ones that I didn't describe, appear to have been designed for only one purpose, and that's to hide the fact that there is a relationship, a very strong and predictable relationship between the county and the state ID numbers. And there is, as far as I'm concerned, no legitimate reason to do this. And I've spoken with quite a few database experts. I've talked with a lot of programs. I've talked with Jeff about this. I don't know how many dozens of hours. None of us have been able to come up with a legitimate reason, but we all can come up with illegitimate reasons to do this. And the one that is just top of mind is this would let you track the fake voters. And how does it let you track the fake voters? It lets you track them because it's essentially creating a third ID number. Because that unique relationship between the numbers is something that can be quantified. You can attach a number to that, and it's going to be consistent, it's reversible. And actually, I have reversed it. And that can be used to identify them. And you might wonder, well, what's the point of doing that? They already have an identifier. Why not just use the state ID number or the county ID number? Doesn't that work too? The reason is you don't want to get caught at home with those numbers on your computer all attached to phantom records. You want to have a bunch of numbers. If somebody catches you, they will have no idea what they refer to. Only you will know, or other people who have the algorithm. That's what that's for. So it's very interesting. But beyond that, and Jeff kind of hinted at this earlier, so I want to expand on it. How close am I to showing that you can link these numbers to nefarious doings in the voter roll database? Okay. Now, I have identified 4 algorithms, and I should note, by the way, I have had help on this. It's not like I did absolutely everything on my own. I did a lot of it on my own. But there was a programmer who helped me at the beginning who identified a couple of very important components of this. I'm not going to go into the details, primarily because that would involve going into the weeds, and I'd be talking math and stuff. So. But he's a very good guy, and he did make a couple of crucial, he had a couple of really important insights. So in any event, one of those algorithms I'm calling the shingle algorithm, and every single record attached to that algorithm is suspicious. And the reason is because
the shingle algorithm,
99.34% of them are purged records, which means that I can predict with 99.34% accuracy their status based on their ID number, which should be impossible because your ID number and your status are independent, or they're supposed to be independent. They should not have a dependent relationship, but they do. And that is really problematic. Now, outside of the shingle algorithm, the status cannot be predicted by the voter ID numbers. It can only be predicted within that group. And there are no active records in that region. So it implies that those records were created purged to begin with, that those numbers were reserved for purged records. Now you might wonder, what's the point of that? Well, here's the thing. When I compare it to cloned records, the cloned records fit exactly on top of those purged records, okay? And they, when you look at it, they form a shape. I call it the shingle algorithm because to me it looks like the profile of a shingle. But since when I use this example with people, they have a hard time visualizing this, I'll call it a swastika instead. Everybody knows what a swastika looks like. And it's the same thing, basically, because what it is, you've got a body and then you've got arms coming off of it, okay? And those arms that come off this shape make it really, really hard to isolate. And that's why it's 99.34% and not 100% certainty. Because it's hard to to extract the numbers that kind of fall underneath those arms or in awkward places, because when you are working with a state space like this, you have rectangular selections, so you have to make them very small in order to do that. And I'm getting into the weeds. I can see this with Jeff's face, so I apologize.
Let's leave it there.
So, but the point is, though, that I shouldn't be able to predict this, but I can predict it, and there are other things I can predict based on these numbers. And actually, it really comes down to which algorithm is being used. Okay. Now, in the spiral pattern, which is the one I described earlier, I can't predict which ones are going to be clones based on it. But what I can do is I can produce an exact list of all of those ID numbers and how they're linked to the county ID numbers, which means I reverse the algorithm. I should not be able to do that. If you're randomizing these for any legitimate security purpose, it would truly be random, and I wouldn't be able to do this, but I can. The other thing is, and this is also important, I have discovered, thanks to the algorithm, which numbers have been deleted. I wouldn't be able to tell that unless I had the algorithm. Actually, let's put it another way. I can see which numbers are missing, but I can't tell which identities they were linked to. But because of the algorithm, I can do that. So I can, because it turns out they're clones. What do you know? Big surprise, right?
Here you go. He can track the cloned votes through this shingle, what he calls a shingle. He can discover who those county IDs were, which are clones,